Welcome to Jogris. I'm Norday, and today I have my deck list for D-Brigade in BT7 format for you. Mono Black D-Brigade, no Omnimons, which makes it a budget deck. I think the whole thing is like $30 or less than that on TCG Player right now. So if you're trying to get in on the game and you don't want to break the bank, this might be a good choice for you. Unfortunately, it doesn't have the easiest matchup with blue hybrids. I think that's like its only really hard matchup in this format, but that's half of the format, so it's pretty crippling. But the with some tech and some good play, I think you can make it a little easier, but it's still a pretty rough matchup. But let's get into it. Let's get into the cards. First off, Digitama. Got 1 Sumemon and 4 Pagumon. Pagumon is just the best generic black level 2. I think this deck right now, it goes off 65% of the time and draws you a card. The rest of the time, it usually isn't that big of a deal because you don't want to draw that many options or tamers after the early game anyway. You kind of just want to get to your pieces. But I think he's good. I think it's better to run 4 Pagumon than more attack buffs because, as we'll get into probably a lot, in this format, especially against the blue hybrid, in the blue hybrid matchup, you don't really want your Digimon to survive combat very much. Blue just, like, it'll slurp their Digivolution sources up, and then they'll be frozen until it turns into an attack, a security attack from a Zulongmon or whatever. Which also, run the 1 Sumemon, because you do go through all 5 sometimes, and it is useful to have a 7k Commandermon. The 5k Commandermon, usually the one you want to put on him. And it pretty consistently, you will have a second D-Brigade out, even if you don't want to. It's hard to not leave them on the board sometimes. And it gives you some good trades, especially if you're in a matchup where there's blockers or like Mechanorimon, stuff like that. He's good to have just 20% of the time. So that's why I run the Sumemon. You could run Missymon, or whatever it is. If your like local is all blue hybrids, Missymon might be better just to make it less likely that the Commandermon survives attacking into security or whatever. But I think just at that point, just go Sumemon. It doesn't really matter. Or even just go 4 babies. You could handle that right now pretty easily. But onto the main deck. Before we get into any of the D-Brigades, gotta point out the MVP, Hagurumon. This guy is pretty incredible, especially in this deck. All of the D-Brigades are machines or cyborgs. And he's on play, discard a machine or cyborg, draw 2 cards. So he pays for himself and cycles through your 2 cards. A lot of the D-Brigades you really don't want to play, and that's the perfect use for him. And he's just, in general, he's really good. He's just really, really good. Synergizes with everything in this deck excellently. And we'll get into that more later. And now on to the D-Brigades. We have the Commandermons, and of course you run 4 of each of the Commandermons. It's a pretty flexible line. The 3-cost one with his on-deletion effect is just huge tempo. With 16, that is just 1 in 3 of your cards are Commandermon, so he's usually going to replace himself. Sometimes you don't want that in this format, but in general, it's great tempo. For 3 memory, getting out 2 bodies is just always worth it. The 5k one, he gets a lot of really nice trades, especially coming out of security. Like I said, the Tsumemon turns him into 7k, and that's very nice sometimes. 3k one, he's just cost efficient, and unfortunately, the blocker is terrible right now. Blockers just don't do anything. They get stunned, they get pierced over, they get suspended and attacked over anyway. This guy, I really think that this one should cost 3, but either way, he's the worst one, and you only really want to play them if you don't have the other ones, frankly. But moving on to the other D-Brigades. I only run 3 Sealsdramon because he's terrible. The best use for him is to discard him with Hagurumon. The second best use is to see it milled with Pride Memory Boost. Occasionally you will want to evolve into him to draw a card and just leave your opponent at 1 or 2. He's kind of useful sometimes for that, but you never want to pay 2 to attack. Like I said, blockers just don't do anything right now. He's kind of bad, but you do still run 3 because you need a lot of D-Brigades to play the king of the deck, the Darkdermon, who, of course, he's got Rush, and on play, you can put up to 5 D-Brigades on top of your deck to rebate memory, 2 memory for each D-Brigade. You still need to have 3 to put him into play, and Memblos stop him, memory blockers stop him, but he's just so flexible and so useful, and especially with stuff with Hagurumon and the Pride Memory Boost, you can cycle and end up putting yourself in a position where you're playing Darkdermon back-to-back, multiple turns in a row. Oftentimes he attacks out of hand, so he can swing even if Blue Hybrid has all of your stuff frozen. He's an incredible card, and he's why this deck works. He is he's the king of this deck for sure, Darkdermon. And now outside of the D Brigades, you of course run 4 Chumon. He's our Memblo, our memory blocker. He's the worst memory blocker. He only has 1K for some reason, but he's the cutest memory blocker. He has awesome artwork, so run 4. Gotta run 4 this format. And then 2 Grumblemon. Sorry, my mouth is dry. We got 2 Grumblemon. I really do want to run 3, but I haven't had a chance to test 3, and 2 has worked well enough, but I do think that if I were to change anything about this list, it would try to fit in a 3rd Grumblemon. He's just, he's a hybrid. I don't need to explain him. And now for the one mystery big tech of this deck, I have 1 Mamemon. Now, this is weird. It might be a little unintuitive. It is, he has Decoy, which that's never ever come into play. It's real important thing is an on deletion effect down here, which is delete one of your opponent's Digimon with a play cost of 7 or less. With 6K, there's a lot of board states against Blue Hybrid where you can, let's say, evolve one of your useless Sealsdramon. A lot of times they'll ignore a Sealsdramon in play because they'd rather you pay the 2 to attack with him than anything else. You can evolve a Sealsdramon and then trade into a Korikakumon, and then his ability can blow up a Beowulfmon that they just ended their turn playing, or can blow up a Bokomon or a memory blocker or another hybrid that's out. There is just a lot of it's hard to see on paper when you're piloting it. There's a lot of board states where he comes out and just gets you that +1 and has a big tempo swing, a big board swing in your favor. And he's just really cool. He can evolve Grumblemon and then Mamemon for 5 memory if you have the 5 memory, and do it that way. And you've drawn 2 cards on the way doing that. And because of the 3 to evolve and the drawing cards, and just how this board tends to how this deck tends to maintain its boards, I think this guy is really cool in this deck. And I suggest other people who are interested in this deck test him. And that's it for the Digimon. Onto the options. We have 3 Pride Memory Boost. This guy is awesome. If there weren't Memblos, I'd probably play 4. It's reveal the top 3, put a black Digimon that costs 4 or less into play, and then you send the other 2 to your trash. That's incredible. It synergizes everything. It costs 4 and only rebates to the memory back, which is a little bit less than the other memory boost, but then the tempo of getting a guy from it and putting them into your discard pile. That's actually, even if you don't get a guy from it, sometimes like milling your Sealsdramons completely, that's good. That's pretty good. It's sometimes better than if you got a guy. So this card's incredible. Like I said, I would run 4 if there weren't Memblos. And now for a controversial card that I don't think should be controversial, I run 3 Dark Lords. Now, I think this card is incredible. It's some of the most cost-effective destruction in the game, especially right now, where with hybrids, the general cost of cards in play are low, and there are a lot of rookies that will gain value just by sitting in plays. Like, if you've played Magic, there's the old idiom, Bolt the Bird. I think Roar the Bokomon pretty stands true right now. This game deck accelerates quickly. It has a lot of constant tempo that it doesn't really run out of. So denying your opponent that early game tempo, you can easily recover. You can, instead of playing that 3 memory on a guy and letting your opponent gain memory from like a Sora and Joe or whatnot, deleting their Bokomon or their memory blocker, that has a big compounding effect through the game. They have to get to another one, and then they have to spend the time and the memory putting it into play. And they don't get a security damage from it, which is value that's easily overlooked, because that's a big part of those things staying into play, is that they threaten security damage. But a Dark Roar, I do think if you go second and your opponent starts with a Bokomon, then 100% of the time, Dark Roar, the Bokomon, that gives you the best odds at that matchup. And in general, it's just great tempo. Like if you're playing against blue and they have stuff stunned, you can oftentimes kill a 6 cost or 7 cost guy with it. And then that's kind of like, I mean, you're trading 3 memory for sometimes 5 or 6. It's incredible value, incredible tempo. This card's very underrated. I don't think people are thinking about it correctly. I don't think it's very comparable to other destruction in the game. One of the best cards in the game, I think, right now, especially this format. I would be running 4, but there are some matchups still that are showing up, especially in my local, that I don't always want them. Moving on to the big boy destruction, and this is a lot of flexibility. This is kind of up to preference. I have 4 slots with 2 Iron Fist Onslaught, 1 Ultimate Flare, and 1 Gewalt Schwarmer. These, like I said, these like super flexible with these slots. I would be running more if your meta is like all blue hybrid. It's completely viable to run more than 1 Gewalt Schwarmer. It deletes their entire board. It gets rid of your stuff that they're stunning, and if they have like 1 memory and they're trying to set you up to like a big Azulongmon. If you have like 1 security man and they're trying to set you up to a big Azulongmon play, this can just like turn them off, and then you can just race back ahead with your D-Brigade stuff, your Grumblemons and your Darkdermons or whatever. They're on deletion Commandermons, you can destroy the board and they'll often replace themselves. This card's just extremely good right now. The only problem is it doesn't activate in security, which really does suck. Now, most of the time, like destroying your own stuff, you probably want more control about that, but I think even right now, I would be okay with this happening in security just to win games when they're doing a bunch of damage all in one turn, which is happening once. I think which is another reason why I don't like Omnimon in this deck, is a lot of the games all kind of end at once. The first 2 security might get chipped in the first couple turns, but then the last 2 and 3, that stuff isn't very impactful unless it gives you a turn, unless it destroys stuff that's about to do more damage, which is why I do run 3 of these. These guys, 2 Ultimate Flares and 1 Iron Fist. There's a lot of green in my local. If it would, and it was Jessamon still. If there was more Jessamon, I'd probably go Ultimate Flare. If it was all hybrids, like I said, probably go 2 Gewalt Schwarmers, and then, I don't know, it could go either way. I think next, with BT8, all 4 of these slots just turn into Dark Gaia Force, unfortunately. It's just better than all of these. But, yeah, don't overlook this guy, and don't underlook this guy either. Gewalt Schwarmer's very, very good right now against specifically blue hybrid. Red hybrid and green hybrid have cards that cost 8 and 9 that sit in play. So, but this deck, and like, you don't care, you don't want your stuff to survive. You want it to do a security damage and then just die. Almost 100% of the time in this deck. So it's pretty good to Gewalt Schwarmer everything. All right, and last but not least, the Tamers. And this is also a little strange, but I have logic between it. I run 4 Izzy. This is mono black deck, so he always costs 3. He always rebates you that memory. Memory blockers don't stop him, because he is a tamer. And he rearranges the top 3 cards in your deck, which that's always great. It lets you decide what you're drawing for turn. It lets you decide what you're drawing with your evolution on your when you evolve your baby. I'm rambling. It's just really good, and it often ends your opponent's turn. And if it ends your opponent's turn, it's kind of like giving you 4 memory. You start at 3 with the resetter. So I really love this Izzy. I completely understand. I run 2 Joe and Izzy, or Izzy Joe, Jizzy, whatever you call it. And I completely understand going 3 of each. A lot of people probably think that's better. It probably is better a lot of the time. But especially right now, I like 4 Izzy. I like that he always costs 3. You never ever want to give blue hybrid 4 memory to work with without ending your turn. You never want to let them play a Davis or a Sojo without ending their turn if you can help it, especially if they have a Bokomon on play and they can just snowball all sorts of value off of that. So him only costing 3 is great. Him coming out of security and giving me a memory is incredible. And also you get to he sets up your Pride memory boosts. Turn 1, if your opponent starts with, let's say, if you're going second, your opponent starts with Bokomon or memory blocker or 3-cost tamer or whatever, it's good to play the Izzy to go to 0 before you evolve your guy, and lets you have more. It gives you a lot of flexibility over the early game, and you need that to really have a good matchup with Blue Hybrid specifically. This guy helps with that matchup in hopefully ways you understand. I feel like it's hard for me to describe. I've been playing this deck a lot, and some of the things hard for me to describe. I've been rambling a lot. This is my first deck profile, so hopefully I did a good job. But let's move on. Again, I said I didn't like Omnimon's Vork Defeat in this. He is when he's in your hand, he's bad. He's bad. He never does anything. You can argue you can evolve a Darkdermon into him, but I feel like there's almost never a time where that's happening, and it's not like a last-ditch effort. It's not you're not already about to lose. Because the Darkdermons do come out. When you want the Darkdermons to come out, you want that to be the end of the game. You want that to be putting either attacking for game or putting pressure on your opponent so they have to focus on not losing rather than winning. And the Omnimons they don't really do that. They do delete a Tamer, which is very, very strong, but they're so slow about it. You have to already have your end game set up. And then in lieu of winning the game, you're deleting a Tamer, which sometimes maybe that's good, but I don't think that's worth playing. When he comes out of security, he's great, but like I was kind of saying earlier, and I probably didn't make much sense about this, is I think that the only security, at least when you're piloting this deck, that are really that impactful are the first 2 and maybe 3 that flip over. After that, the games tend to get to such a tight line that your last 3 security are typically all happening. You're taking all that damage at once, and you're hoping one of them stops the attacks. And the Omnimon doesn't do that. And then Omnimon also gives Zulongmon an extra thing. It gives them something that they can stun, like with their Howling. It gives your opponent something they can stun with Howling Memory Boost or a Korikakumon. It gives them something that fuels Sora and Joe. It's just, I think it's really not great in this meta. I honestly am not a big fan of it in this deck in general. I did test it quite a lot, especially in BT6 meta and EX1 meta, and I just did not think that having one or more less cards in your hand at all time is never worth that once in a while moment of deleting a Tamer. It's cool to delete a Tamer, not much does that, but I don't think that little bit of value is at all worth what you lose by not having the deck more optimized for your early game hands and for setting up lethal as fast as possible. Like I said, you really want to be putting pressure on your opponent so that they can't focus on winning the game. They have to focus on not losing the game. They have to focus on stopping you before they can focus on winning the game. And unfortunately, Blue Hybrid does that without even thinking about it. You have to put that early damage, and that just puts Tamers into play, which then gain a billion. They catch up immediately, and that's tough. And because of that, I would say in that matchup, you do want to play less Digimon out of your hand. You want to spend more memory playing Tamers and options. If you never want to give them 4, you never ever want to start them with 4 if you can help it. And very quickly, that becomes difficult to do, especially once memory boosts and Tamers start coming out of security. But other matchups, pretty easy. I think this is a very good matchup against Jessamon, especially with Dark Roars, and there's still a lot of Jessamon around for me. Red Hybrid can kind of beat it in a race sometimes. It depends on how their Atomic Infernos show up. But you put enough pressure on them so it turns into a race at worst for you. Green Hybrids are pretty easy. Depends on the variation. It might do something. A lot of your stuff is blockers if they're running Trojan Horsemon or Ancient Troymon or whatever that guy's called. I don't think that guy's around too often anymore, but against them, you have enough blockers that you can just attack through that. It's just I don't know what else you're gonna probably be seeing around right now. Maybe Cherubimon. It's just a Cherubimon and security control. You just go as aggressive as possible, and sometimes they get the combo early and it's whatever. But you have a pretty decent matchup in those cases, I think. Or in security control, you just keep attacking. Your stuff is so low value that they can't gain value, even really with their free options, unless you play into stuff, or they just get so much life gain out of their security that you don't have enough time. So I guess I'm rambling again. I love D-Brigade. I hope that it gets better with BT8. Like I said, Dark Gaia Force basically replaces all of the destruction in it. It just does all of those jobs better. There might be some other changes. Dark Gaia Force does make the Izzies weaker. Actually, I don't know how that works. I gotta look that up. Comment below how the Izzies work with dual colored cards, because I haven't looked that up yet. And mulligans and sideboards. I almost forgot about that. I was winding down. With mulligans, let me see. With mulligan, you would rather have a lot of Commander Mons than less. In general, an average hand is always okay to mulligan, because you're probably just going to get another average hand or a better than average hand, and then you have the information of what's on the bottom of your deck. But in this deck, where there are like kind of combo pieces you're seeking out at different points in the game, you have to remember that what you're putting there is on the bottom of the deck, and you're not going to really cycle through the... I don't think I've ever cycled through the whole deck in this, so that stuff's gone. And if you open, like, let's say 5 Commander Mons, you really don't want to mulligan that, because that makes it really difficult to get to the D-Brigades to set up the Dark Dramons later. More Commander Mons is better than less Commander Mons. If you have a 0 Commander Mon hand, then you might want to weigh what the matchup is, and if you're going first or second or whatever. Yeah, it's really just like know that what you put on the bottom you're never going to see in that matchup, and you need to keep your Commander Mons around. You don't want to only have 11 Commander Mons in your deck to work with functionally. Excuse me. And for sideboards, I have not played ever with a sideboard yet, so I'm not entirely sure how that's going to work. I'd say probably side more destruction to fix your matchups. You really maybe consider what other people are side decking against you, and try to avoid that. Try to give your opponent more dead cards in those second and third games. Otherwise, I'm not sure. I'm not even sure if we're going to keep having sideboards. So, okay, anyway, sorry. There's a long-ass, it was like 20-something minutes deck profile. It's my first one, like I said before. Hopefully I did good. If you enjoyed it and you want more decks and strategies and games or whatnot, be sure to hit subscribe to Jogress. That's us. It's me and my friends. And I guess that's all. Thanks for watching. See you later.